I was playing in Ottawa, and I wasn't doing professionally. I was just playing in like bands, just you in so many bands. And I had to do a gig of all things for this rap group. These three kids, like rappers, they weren't of anyone of note. They had no fans. They were doing a battle of the bands, and they'd seen me play with some other bands, and they'd asked me to play for them for this hip hop battle of the bands thing. That was actually at a school or something. And the big claim to fame was that this rapper of note at the time from Toronto, this guy named Saukrates or Sox, was one of the judges. And if you won, I think they won like some recording time with him producing them. And so I did this battle of bands. It was terrible. The group was terrible, but I did my best. And as I was like walking out to like catch a cab with my drums, Socrates actually came running after me. He's like, hey, what's your name? Who are you? And I'm like, I'm just Sekou. I'm just from Ottawa, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, well, you're really good, and I would love to work with you. I'm producing this new artist who's kind of like an old school R&B singer that I would love you to play drums for. Her name is Julie Black. And she doesn't have anything out yet, but I would love for you to play through. If you're ever down there, just let me know. Because I think you could make a go of it if you wanted to do this. And it was the first time someone in the industry who had like videos and Junos and stuff had just unsolicited told me that it was worth taking a stab at. And so I was like, oh. And so from that point, I was always like, am I going to move to Toronto and be a drummer? Is that what's going to happen right now? I was probably like early 20s, 22, 21 or something.
The prophecy has been told. Saukrates planted the seed there.
And I remember, and he gave me his phone number and said to call him. And I just was like, when you're young and someone gives you that kind of nudge, it's all you need. You might as well tell me, like, I'm going to make it. And so I kept thinking about it. And at the time I was with a girl and we were living together and, life was going okay. And I was playing again. I think if I remember correctly, I was playing in 13 different projects, like active. I'm not talking like people who just, I was a drummer for sometimes. I'm talking people who had gigs all the time, 13. And it was like, I was renting a place with a bunch of people. And I remember them telling me like, the only thing you do here is you come back home, you shower, you change your clothes and you leave. Why are you paying rent? Like it's just stupid, like I was just always working. And it got to a point where I remember, so this was the other moment where I was like, I got to make a go of this professionally and I got to move to Toronto. But I was supposed to go home to visit my grandmother in Trinidad for a couple of weeks. And someone called me, one of the bands I was in, and said, hey, they're doing a Funkapalooza. They're doing like a big funk fest at Barrymore's with like 7 bands. And they asked us to do it. Can you do it? And I was like, I would love to, can't go home and train that. Like, it's too bad. Okay, whatever. A couple hours later, another band I'm in called and said, hey, they're doing Funkapalooza. They want us to play. And I'm like, oh, it's funny. Such and such just called me. Would love to, can't, blah, blah, blah. Okay, cool. 45 minutes later, a third band called that I was in. Had to say no. I'll flash forward to the end of the day. Funkapalooza got called off because 7 of the 9 bands was me on drums because it was such a small fishbowl. You know what I mean? It was, and it wasn't necessarily that I was the only guy for the job, but I was the guy that people just called first for the gig, and I just took all the gigs. And so I was like, this place is too small. This place is definitely too small, and I need to go somewhere where there's a bigger bowl where I can work with more people, maybe people of more substance. So I talked to my girlfriend about it, and she was, God bless her, she was like, we have to go. I was like, well, what are you gonna do? She's like, I'll figure it out. I'll find a job, but we gotta go. So we moved here, and a friend that I had that lived in Toronto took me out. I want to say the second night I got here to College Street, which, as you know, for Toronto is like, there's the Orbit Room, there's College Street Bar, there's Revival, there's Vivo, there's what's the other place down the street? Um, point being, there's a bunch of places where you can just go and see people playing music. And he took me out to see some bands play, and I immediately regretted my decision because I saw some of the illest players. And at the time, like these, it's funny because these guys have all, it's a small scene. I know all of the, not just the drummers, but the guys in the bands now and stuff. But I didn't realize it. But I just happened to have walked into 4 venues where Mark Kelso was playing. Who's like, if you don't know Mark Kelso, he's like a legendary Canadian drummer. He's played for, like, he's done a ton of movie scores. He's played for Gino Vanelli. He's played for some big Italian artists he's played with. Anyway, he's a phenomenal educator and drummer. He was playing. The next place I walked into, Schumacher Ali was playing drums. And Schumacher's played for the Gap Band and the SOS Band and Al Green and stuff. So I'm watching this legendary, dyed-in-the-wool R&B legend, and I've never heard of any of these guys before. But so to me, they're just guys I'm walking and seeing playing the most insane shit I've ever seen.
You realize there are levels to this game.
There are levels to this game. The next place was Davide Di Lorenzo, who's played with a bunch of Canadian legendary people. And Davide's become one of my favorite drummers. He's one of these guys who plays just what the music calls for until you need him to turn it on, and then he will melt your face. And then Randy Cook was at some other place. And I was like, yeah, this was a mistake. I am not any of these guys, and I should not have been here. I'm going to die on the vine. And as it turned out, that just makes you want to be better. It makes you want to up your game and up your stock so you can play with these people who are now your contemporaries, and you can play stuff just to hold your own and tread water. So those were the moments at the beginning that kind of made me go like, okay, maybe I can do it. I had some really good feedback from people and from my situation that kind of told me that it was safe to make a jump, to that professionally.
Do you think that back when you were playing with like up to 13 bands at once, do you think that helped you to develop your drum skill quickly? Because the 10,000 hour theory, it's like you're able to squish in 10,000 hours faster than most because it was like a 13 times multiplier,
I wonder, I don't know if it did or not. I do know back then, because I was playing so much, I was pretty, lack of a better word, I was pretty arrogant. Not outwardly arrogant to people, but internally I felt like I could take whoever's gig because I sort of was doing it and because people were just calling all the time. So I don't think all that to say, I don't think I was pushing or learning a lot because I was just people hiring me for what I did and who I was. I think moving to Toronto really sharpened me because I was playing with people who were of a level I'd never seen before. And I was seeing guys who were playing things that were like, oh, I better get my shit together and learn this stuff because it's kind of the norm. It's expected that these types of, have these tools in your toolbox. So I think more than anything, it was Toronto that really had me learning stuff quickly. I got lucky enough to play with an artist named Ivana Santilli, who was with a band called Bass is Bass, who had they were just like a household name back there. And Ivana people were very much waiting for her debut albums, which I got to be on. And then she had a single that was a drum and bass song that was blowing up the radio up over here for the better part of a year. And so we toured a lot. So, and then playing with just different bands that really had me just learning things from people that were like, okay, this is not a joke. You are not the biggest fish in a small pond anymore. And you can't get by on the things that you think were enough. Now you have to learn, at the time I was doing a lot of R&B gigs and that style of playing, that Questlove, D'Angelo style of that lazy type of R&B way of playing was was a new thing that people were getting into, and I was turning left and right and seeing other guys plugging it off me. Like, I don't know how to do this because it doesn't make any sense. Putting your kick drum behind the beat and your hi-hat ahead of it and your snare, like, but I figured it out because if I didn't, I definitely wouldn't, my phone would stop ringing, you know? So Toronto really played a big part in helping me grow quickly as a drummer.
So you mentioned seeing all these amazing drummers in Toronto. I have a quote here from a Toronto drummer that's gone on to become one of the most iconic, legendary drummers in Canada. This is from Glenn Milcham of Blue Rodeo. So he says, Sekou is a fantastic drummer. His playing just seems to flow out of him effortlessly. He's also hilarious, this keeps coming up, to follow on social media, and very candid about challenges he faces as a pro musician. Like in a recent video where he talked about a crisis of confidence that he went through and how he dealt with it. When someone plays with the certainty he does, but can still be frank about dealing with his insecurities as a musician, he's sharing a really important lesson. Big respect to Sekou. So that's Glenn Milcham from Blue Rodeo.
Wow, man, you're killing me with these accolades from these people that are, I mean, these are all people that I think really, really, really highly of. You know, Glenn and I have only crossed paths a few times, but there's an instant kinship there. And I have such a love for the stuff he's done with Blue Rodeo. You know, like with Darren, like we're good friends and we've hung out a bunch and talked fishbone a bunch. But you know, it's nice to know when you're just working your butt off that you can look up and that kind of, that's the impression that you left with people. It's always nice to hear that from people.